Welcome to the Drum Shuffle, a podcast offering insights, perspectives, and conversations for drummers. I'm your host, Jamie Eads. Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to the Drum Shuffle. Jamie Eads joining you as always. This is episode 55. I hope everybody's having a fantastic week out there. Got a great interview for you today. I'm going to be joined in just a moment by my friend Tooke of the Steelwoods, and we're going to talk all about what's going on in the Steelwoods camp. New record is out and it's fantastic. So stay tuned for that after this message from our sponsor, Los Cabos Drumsticks. The best kept secret for drummers is finally out. Los Cabos Drumsticks may look like the sticks you grew up with, but these are not your father's drumsticks. Los Cabos Drumsticks is Canada's #1 drumstick brand, and they are coming to a retailer near you. With operations in over 28 countries worldwide, thousands of drummers have already discovered the Los Cabos difference. Using FSC certified wood from Canada and the US, Los Cabos make the finest quality drumsticks, percussion tools, and accessories on the market. The best news, Los Cabos Drumsticks offers you a ton of choice. They have 22 individual drumstick models and 14 percussion tools, many of which are available in 3 different wood types: maple, white hickory, and red hickory. Red hickory comes from the center or heart of the hickory tree and has been independently proven to be both stronger and more elastic than white hickory without adding a lot of weight. While most drumstick manufacturers have shunned red hickory, Los Cabos Drumsticks has embraced it, becoming the only established stick brand in the world to offer a full line of red hickory drumsticks. To learn more about Los Cabos Drumsticks, visit them online at loscabosdrumsticks.com, follow them on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and don't forget to ask for Los Cabos Drumsticks at your favorite retailer. Dare to be different. Join the Red Hickory Revolution with Los Cabos Drumsticks. All right, everybody. As I mentioned, I'm about to be joined by Tooke. Jay is just a super phenomenal guy and a great drummer. And the Steelwoods are just tearing up the world right now. And, you know, some people say it's a great country band. Some people say, no, it's a great Southern rock band. Some folks say it's Americana. I don't care what you call it. It's great music. And their new record, Old News, hit the shelves just a couple of weeks back. It is a monster record, and we talk with Jay about that. But if you have not checked out the Steelwoods yet, do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Go do that immediately because it is fantastic. So without further ado, help me welcome my pal, Tooke, to the Drum Shuffle. Hey, good evening, Jay. How's it going, man?
Good, man. How are you?
I cannot complain a bit. Hey, thanks for taking time to come on the Drum Shuffle. I appreciate it, brother.
Man, really, thanks for having me. I appreciate it a lot.
Oh, no, man. We had to do this. You know, we had the good fortune of hanging out backstage down at Nashville Drummers Jam a few weeks back, and I certainly wanted to get you on for a full episode, so thanks for making it happen so quickly.
Absolutely.
Well, cool. So, Jay, what we typically try to do here on the Drum Shuffle is go back to the very beginning. Tell us where you grew up and how you ended up behind a drum set the first time.
Well, I actually grew up in Canada. I grew up in a really small town called Weyburn, Saskatchewan, which is about an hour north of the Canadian-North Dakota border. So it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's a small town, about 6,000 people. Hockey was king. And lots of oil fields and, that kind of thing. And, pretty standard small town life. And, man, I was probably about 9 years old, I think, when I first got the itch. And I remember watching, music was always a big part of my life. I mean, we always had a piano in the house and, there was always something for me to noodle around on. And I hindsight being 2020, when I look back at it, music it's always just kind of been that, a part of who I am and, ultimately what I wanted to do. But I remember watching the video hit show. It was actually called Video Hits, and they were playing the what was it? Money for Nothing.
Oh yeah,
Dire Straits.
Yeah,
with the big long intro and all the things and the lasers and being 9 years old. I mean, I remember my brain just kind of going, "Wow, what is that?" And I wanted to know, what sound. I wanted to know what sounds sort of correlated with the movement the drummer was making, and that all that stuff really spoke to me. So, we had a drum kit in my school, and I would sneak down there sometimes, and my fourth grade teacher actually was really cool about letting me, try things and see if I could play a beat and kind of get started that way. And then, it just kind of grew out of that.
So very young when you caught the bug per se.
Yeah, I was very young, and I've pretty much been playing ever since.
Well, one of the things that I learned in doing this show, and, I've had other, Canadian drummers on, I grew up in the South, so it was always marching band, right? I mean, that was kind of the gateway for most drummers around here. Up north, there really isn't much of the marching season, and football isn't a big thing in Canada. It's hockey for the most part. So did you kind of plant your seed, so to speak, in school band, like jazz ensemble, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, it was, we had a music program we started music in fourth grade, and it started actually with just playing some bongos for a Christmas program. And then from there, once I got into, it was about sixth grade, I started playing in school band, and I was one of the only percussionists, and it just kind of grew from there. And I just kept going with that. And because it was such a small town, and from an early age, I took to it pretty quickly. The music teachers there would have me come in and play with some of the older bands. I would get into the junior high, and at least get to go watch their jazz bands and play with some of their concert ensembles and that kind of thing, and started studying that way.
I gotcha. Now, who were some of the early influences that you picked up? I mean, I guess I'm curious, how different was it, in Saskatchewan, from where I grew up? I mean, of course, we had, kind of ready access to MTV, and, you always, listen to the radio at night and things like that. But, when did you really start getting, the bug of, I may really want to focus on this?
It was pretty much, I mean, we had top 40 radio, and that's what I was raised on, country radio and top 40 radio. And Canada's version of MTV was called Much Music, and they played, all the same stuff that MTV played pretty much, but they, with more Canadian artists, obviously. But, it was pretty much from that first time that I think I was about 10 or 11. And I remember being, just sitting with some friends that some of my mom's friends that played a little bit, and they had a drum kit, and I was able to sit and just make a little bit of noise with them. And it was, that was a big thing for me. And as goofy as it sounds, that fourth grade Christmas program, I just remember being on stage, and like from then on in, it was anything that I could do to get to play music with other people. And there was something about, I got that, I caught the bug just being on stage and, hearing people react, and, not that we were any good by any stretch. And it was polite applause, like everybody does for their kids at those types of things. But it was very early, as soon as I had a set of drumsticks. I think I started taking my first lessons when I was 10, and I was already listening to, I got really big on Def Leppard and AC/DC. Those were the two bands for me that started it off, because it was stuff that I could, immediately sit down and play. It's like most of us that started, Back in Black was a record that, really I gravitated to, and I'm glad that I did, because Phil Rudd is a huge influence on what I do, and his approach, and the way that he plays, and those early Def Leppard records, with like High and Dry and Pyromania and Hysteria, like just it's real simple playing and stuff that I got into. And then as I got older, I got into Van Halen a lot. Kentucky Headhunters was a band that when I was 12 that I hadn't really heard a proper shuffle up until that point, and they came out with Dumas Walker, and I immediately had to learn how to play a shuffle like Fred does, so it was all kinds of stuff. I mean, but being on where I grew up, like just the fact that it was a lot of top 40 radio and that kind of thing, is I just gravitated to what was getting played on the radio.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and you said one of the magical names in there, Fred Young. I've had the great fortune of being able to hang out with Fred a few times, and man, the way he shuffles can't be taught, right? I mean, he brought that, John Bonham thing to country music. So what a great influence to have. That's amazing to hear you say that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, like he, and it was, a lot of it was because I was a kid, and you'd see the videos, and he had the big chops and the big, the old drum kit, and it was like, man, that's a lot different. Like, he doesn't have a rack, and, he's not like the guy from Queensryche that's got the chains with the cymbals hanging off of him, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
I don't, it was a totally new thing for me, but like, I really latched onto that first Kentucky Headhunters record a lot.
Yeah, it's a good one, and they are the pride of Kentucky for sure. Those guys are legends around these parts for sure. So did you start forming, garage bands as a teenager? I mean, was that kind of your outlet, getting together with other musicians and, playing the skating rink, or tell us a little bit about that? Well,
we had a band in ninth grade. There was some friends of mine from my hometown, and it was just, it's so cold up there in the wintertime. I mean, you're pretty much indoors for 8 months out of the year, unless you absolutely have to be outside. So, I mean, you've got nothing better to do than to sit around and, jam on stuff. And we'd start, that was in and around ninth grade, and we're playing Metallica covers and Guns N' Roses and AC/DC and all that kind of thing. And then I moved to a town about an hour north of where I grew up called Moose Jaw.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of Moose Jaw for sure.
Yep, most people have. And that was one of the first places I was actually in a band that played out. And I think we were called the Malcontent. And, we played, street festivals, and we played, the talent shows at our high school and did all of that. And then I lived up there for about a year and a half, and then I moved back to Weyburn and played with some local guys in town. We had a country band with a female singer, and man, I couldn't tell you the name of the girl that we sang with, but we were doing the early 90s country hits, female fronted kind of stuff, and playing at bars there. And then when I was 19, I moved a province over to the city of Winnipeg, which is in Manitoba, which, if you were a fan of The Office or The Simpsons or other things, Winnipeg gets mentioned in those shows a lot. But that was where I really started to, when I moved there, I'd been playing drums for, about 10 years already, and I'd done a fair amount of gigs for somebody my age. And up there was a really great music scene, whether it was with, I always tell people that Winnipeg is kind of like if you took Austin and Nashville and kind of put it in a blender, you get that sort of eclectic nature that is Austin, but the talent pool like you get in Nashville.
Wow.
And yeah, and it's, they had, there was a bylaw for bars that if you were going to have what they call a cabaret license, which is basically a nightclub license, that you had to have live entertainment. So, and there was a ton of bars up there that, big bars, 1,000-seater plus kind of things. And I got up there, and I was really fortunate to get in with some guys that were older than me. And I worked, within being there for a month, I was playing 4 or 5 nights a week all the time with some of the best musicians that I'd ever heard. And really, they were patient with me and kind of took me under their wing, and it wasn't long before I was pretty busy all the time up there.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a great way to pay dues is, when you're the young cat that's getting all the calls with the, the more seasoned guys, you're going to learn what to do and more importantly, what not to do, right?
Yeah, basically, because I was meeting drummers and stuff, and I was getting a lot of sub calls and doing that thing, but, eventually found my way into a band, like a cover band. And, the way the circuit worked there is, you'd play 5 or 6 weeks in town, and then you'd head out into Ontario and, go out to Thunder Bay and a couple other small towns. You'd do a 3-4 week run, and then you'd come back. And that was kind of the cycle that it was in. So, I was getting an education in the music business that, had I just gone up and maybe just kept playing in garage bands or whatever, that I never really would have gotten, like how to properly do a sound check and how to tune my drums so that the sound tech isn't going, hey man, those sound like garbage. You should maybe figure that out, and just, and having the fire lit under you and having to learn how to do that kind of stuff on the fly. So.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, I know you put in a lot of good work up there. At what point did you make the journey down to Nashville?
Well, it's coming up on about 7 years ago, and I had been, fast forward to, right before I moved down, I'd been touring, had the artist gigs up in Canada with a lot of the bigger named artists up there that, festivals and touring and all that kind of stuff. And I'd been wanting to come down to Nashville for a while, and it was really just a matter of, I was pretty comfortable up there with, the work that I was doing and what I was getting to do. But it's one of those things that, the guys that I look up to from Nashville, can I come down here and can I do it? Can I hang? And that was the big challenge to myself. And it was really just a matter of, kind of getting over my own inhibitions and my, how comfortable I was up there working. Like, I've got this, but, do I just kind of drop everything and go start from scratch? I was 33 years old and, it's a little bit intimidating to do it, but I'm really glad that I did.
Well, I mean, yes, it is intimidating. And, the thing about Nashville that is so amazing to me is, literally like every time you order a cheeseburger or a cup of coffee or park your car, the people that are taking care of you in those situations are the best musicians on the earth. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, I don't know, you could throw a rock anywhere in Nashville and hit an awesome player. So I guess when you make that transition to a place like Nashville, you're going to find out really quick whether you can hang, as you said, or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And because the competition is so high. I mean, man, like there's so, it's staggering, drummers too, but like just how many incredible musical minds live in this city.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Without a doubt. Now, tell me a little bit about how you ended up in your current gig. And I know it's more than a gig. And let me, in the efforts of full disclosure, I am a huge fan of the Steelwoods. I just love what you guys do. I think it's unique. I think it's just really good music. So tell me a little bit about how you got hooked up with Rowdy and Wes and those guys.
Well, first off, thank you. But I met, who did I meet first? I met Rowdy. I had been playing downtown. I used to play at Crossroads, which is on Broadway, every Wednesday night. It was one of the first gigs that I ever started doing on Broadway in town with this girl named Jennifer Friend, and we were doing a lot of we called it the anti-Broadway band because we everything from Steely Dan to Bill Withers to Bob Marley to just a lot really deep cut Stevie Wonder kind of things, and the guitar player that brought me in on that was friends with Rowdy, and I guess Rowdy had been down there one night and he saw me play and he asked me to come play at some out in Jackson. No, it wasn't Jackson. Out in it's escaping me now. Anyway, but he had gotten a hold of me through Tyler and asked me to do that. So we had done a gig there, and we played with a guy named Shannon Lawson on a couple of other gigs. And separately from that, when Wes and his wife had moved to town, they, just kind of walking around, had stumbled in there one night and found that, or it happened upon us. I don't want to say stumbled. It's not like they were, but,
right on.
check my wording there, but they had happened upon the gig, I guess, and they would come down and watch us every Wednesday, and met Wes and just kind of shook hands, and it was really just sort of in passing. But I guess during that time, he and Rowdy had met, and the origins of the band had started through that, and then. From that gig, I had gotten to play with a guy named Jacob Stiefel, and he was going out to Muscle Shoals. They do this show out there called Music Road to Muscle Shoals. And I played on his record that we did out of Memphis with that was produced by a girl named Hallie Phillips, that this was her show. And the Steelwoods were on the gig, and my buddy Elton Charles was playing. And we were all hanging out, and Elton had some other commitments come up, and I was asked to come in and sub in on a few dates, and the rest is just kind of history from there. It was still very early on. I don't even know that the full EP had been released yet at that point. We did a couple of shows, and everything really felt good, and everybody just kind of seemed to click, and then from there things started to pick up very quickly. And here we are 3 years later on our second record, and it's been a really crazy ride, and it's one of the best things that I've ever been involved in.
Well, I mean, it's a great band, and I'm going to back up because I don't want to gloss this over, but I do want to say this. See kids playing on Broadway in Nashville can actually lead to good things happening for you.
It can, and it's one of those things that, it's a fine line being down there, because when I got here, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I was answering Craigslist ads for anybody that needed a drummer. I basically just said yes to anything I could for the first 6 months I was here, just to meet players, because you never know. And it was playing on Broadway when I was doing that Crossroads on Wednesdays there. And then I ended up playing with another guy named Chris Mauk, and we did Friday, Saturdays there all the time. And, it was from there that, I played with Keith Anderson for a little while, and I got that gig through a couple of the guys that were in the band that I was playing with that were playing with Keith, and did that gig for a little while. And, it's a lot of people kind of poo-poo Broadway, and there are pluses and minuses to that scene down there. But I mean, it's the law of attraction. I think that like-minded people and like-minded players end up finding each other, and I think that really great things can happen for people.
Yeah, I mean, so many people do say that. They move to Nashville and they go, well, I'm never playing Broadway. I'm just not going to do that. It's like it's selling your soul to the devil or something like that. But, it is where, it's not where the locals go, certainly. But when somebody comes to Nashville, everybody knows Tootsie's Orchid Lounge. Everybody knows Robert's Western World. And, I've got news for you, man. Willie Cantu from Buck Owens and the Buckaroos is playing down at Robert's Western World every now. You know what I mean? You just never know who you're going to see down there. So I don't know why people just immediately shut off a great avenue for ways to meet great players. Yeah,
and it's the kind of thing, if you're smart about it, you kind of you navigate things a bit. I mean, not to say that you have to be, Johnny Networker or anything like that, but I think if you show up and just kind of do your job and play for the song, whether you're a guitar player, a bass player, or anything, keyboard player, like whatever your instrument is. I mean, if you're down there and you're doing a good job and you care enough about your craft and about playing music, I mean, I think that that's where guys that play down there end up getting these gigs, because there's tons of guys down there that all have artist gigs that still play down there and started down there. And, it's the difference of, if you look at it as a learning experience about how do I get better? If you're a real young guy and you really don't know what's going on, I mean, you can go down there and you can learn, because you're playing 4 hours at a time, and that, there's something to that. And if you let yourself get bored and your playing can suffer. But I think that if you take the opportunity, to play, let's say, you're doing 3 shifts a week, that's 12 hours of drums to practice, and not to practice chops, but to practice playing music. And that's invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. There is no substitute for that experience, to be in a situation where, and let's face it, when you're on Broadway, you're going to take requests. You can't say, well, that one's not in the set list. If somebody throws $20 up on the stage, you're going to play whatever song it is they just said, right? I mean,
yeah.
And being in that situation is invaluable experience for later in life.
It really is, because it forces you to learn how to listen, and that's the thing, because, inevitably it's going to be somebody in the band is going to know it. And as long as you could say, how do I get in and how do we get out? And is there something that happens in the middle of this tune? And then, so it's that thing of, it really makes you work your brain. Somebody's going to count you in. This is how you get into the tune. And then, they tell you about, I remember, learning, I can't even remember what song it was. It was a deep cut Skynyrd tune. There's a bunch of pushes, in the middle of this section, and just quickly, the guitar player says, okay, so in the bridge, this thing's going to happen, and then it's going to be da da ba ba ba, or something like that. And you have to know that, okay, I got to play this groove, and I got to make this whole thing groove, and then I got to get to that section. You got to work your memory, and can I get in there and can you pull it off? It's, sometimes you're going to fall on your, well, most of the time you're going to fall on your face, but it's that type of repetition and having to learn material that maybe you've never heard before, or anything like that. And it's you're never going to learn that in a school anywhere. Getting thrown into the fire is the best way to learn.
That's right. And I was going to say, it's learning the language, in the moment. Hey, this is what's going on. And guess what? When you said it was a deep cut Skynyrd song, it had all these pushes in the middle, I know the song just by what you hummed. It's that smell. So
it might have been. I don't know. It was. Man, I don't remember.
Well,
it was a long time.
By the way you described it, that's what I heard in my head. But it's just, I've been in situations where somebody will turn around and say, "You've never heard this before. Think ZZ Top." Well, okay, yeah. So that's part of my vernacular, and I can fake my way through it. And if somebody gives you a hand signal, you know when to end. That just can't be bought anywhere.
No.
It's good stuff. So, you guys just finished up back in December. I'm going to say either late November, early December. You guys finished up a big run. You guys were out on the road with Cody Jinks. And I know that the new record is either out or just about to be out, which I want to say thank you to you and your management team for giving me a little sneak preview of some of the tracks. Man, smoking good record you guys have.
Thank you, man.
It's amazing. So were you guys writing while you were out on the various tours this year, or did you guys just kind of hole up in the studio and let it rip, so to speak?
Well, a lot of the tunes, so, a lot of the songs on the record, Wes and Rowdy had been working on and writing with each other, and kind of with a few other writers in town over time. And we actually, the record was recorded in June of 2018. Yeah. So they had kind of got the short list of songs together, and then we were out on a run in Texas, and we had a few days off in between dates. And because Texas is such a drive, we ended up just getting an Airbnb with a house with a 2-car garage. And we just set up like we were back in high school, except we were lucky enough to have an in-ear monitor rig and some real microphones.
Like in high school with an in-ear monitor rig, right?
Yeah, but it and a laptop with the Pro Tools rig on it. So we were able to kind of, the four of us got together and just kind of worked out the songs, like the bones of them were there and the core of it was there. And then, when the four of us get into a room together, we're able to kind of, there's this thing that just kind of happens, and collectively we sort of put our own stamp on it, and things come together. And so that was a lot of fun, because we had about 3 days where we could just sit and work on the tunes and listen back and see what we liked and what we didn't like. And then when it came time to get into the studio, we had that roadmap down, which is really important, because we could, after that time in Texas, we were able to then work on things and sound check. We could try a few different things and just keep fine tuning until we got right into the studio. And then we did the bulk of the record. I think it was about 5 or 6 days, 6 days, or 5.5 days, something like that. And we cut that out in Nashville at Echo Mountain Studios. And it was a really, really great experience, because we all, we just set up in a room and we played the songs. And, a lot of the songs, even the vocals that you hear, I mean, it's one take all the way through. And it's, I'd say about 75% of that record is how we played it and how Wes sang it and how it came together. And, maybe we do, there was a couple tunes that, I punched in I changed the way the groove is in a solo section and made it a little bigger. And I'd go in and punch in like 4 bars or something. But I mean, for the most part, what you're hearing is what you get, flaws and all.
Well, there's something to be said about, tracking stuff live on the floor, musicians, honest to God, making music together at the same time, and I think that's a lost art form in a lot of ways. But I could really tell it on some of the stuff that I've heard. And I just want to say this, you guys have put a few cover tracks on this record. And I want you to, I don't want to steal any thunder here, but explain to us why you put some covers on this record and who they're by and what all that means, because I think it's a cool story.
Well, a lot of it, we had lost Tom Petty, and we ended up cutting Southern accents. And, Tom Petty, even if, he's just such a huge influence on everybody, us and, 90% of the musical world. I mean, and it was one of those things that, the cover songs that we did were really just to pay tribute. We put Whipping Post on there, as a tribute, and we put our own spin on that tune, and we did a song called One of These Days by Wayne Mills, who is a good friend of the band, good friend of Rowdy's especially. They were very close, and Wayne was killed a few years ago. Tragically, he was shot in downtown Nashville, and it was one of those things that Rowdy wanted to do, record one of his songs just as a tribute, because he's such a prolific songwriter, but also just to pay tribute to his friend and let his legacy kind of live on and have us be able to carry that torch for him, which was a great thing to be a part of. And I'm blanking on the last cover that we put on.
Well, you've got, I think there's going to be a Merle Haggard cover tune on there.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and the one that I was going to mention, that I heard, and I thought it was really cool. When I first started listening to it, I was like, man, this seems so familiar. And then I realized it was a Black Sabbath song.
Oh yeah, that's right. Well, we did, on the first record, Hole in the Sky, which is, another Sabbath tune.
Right.
And it was just sort of brought up, are we going to do another Sabbath tune? And it was, Changes is such a good song. I mean, and it's, it's a little bit of a, I don't want to say a departure, but it's definitely got more of a 60s soul era vibe to it. We borrowed a little bit from, the great Charles Bradley's version of that tune and just kind of put a louder guitar-y edge on it and, put our own stamp on it. And that song was really fun to record.
Well, and I said to you, I can tell you guys put a lot of time into this, and I mean, obviously we're a drum show, and we don't typically talk about paradiddles and radamucues and all that. So relax,
Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm not going to ask you about the time signature in the bridge or anything like that, but the drums sound amazing on what I've heard. So, anything that you can speak to that, how you got the drum sounds that we're hearing on this record.
Well, you got to think, I got to give a whole bunch of love to the good folks over at Pearl. I've been a Pearl artist for a couple of years now, and the drums that I used on the record is the kit that I've been touring with for the last year and change. Pearl reissued the wood fiberglass drums. Have you seen those?
Absolutely. They look cool.
Yeah. And I remember being at the Pearl Artist Lunch, and they had one of those out, and a buddy of mine and I just sat there and kept hitting this kick drum on the floor tom and just blown away by how good it sounded. And they've got this really great low thuddy timbre to them. They're very reminiscent of older drums from the 60s, 50s and 60s that have that real thuddy kind of thing, where you don't get a lot of ring. They're not shiny drums as I like to call them.
Yeah. And,
I tend to tune pretty low. I hit really hard. I don't hit Ray Luzier hard, but I
nobody does.
I thought I hit hard, and then I got to see Ray play, and it was like, wow, dude, you're amazing. But it's that thing of I'm a big fan of big big drums. I used a 24-inch kick drum, 13/16, and then I have a 20-inch Pearl marching bass drum that I put legs on, and I use that as my second floor tom. And I tune everything really low, and I try and move as much air, and I really err on the side of, where you might be able to play 6 notes, I'd rather play 2, so that you've got a real girthy tone that's taking up more space sonically, as opposed to just trying to show off and play a bunch of notes and things. And I really gravitate towards that tuning and that playing style, because it takes up more space in the mix that I think serves a lot more with the type of music that we play, as opposed to trying to play a flurry of notes through something that's maybe tuned a little bit higher. And yeah, I mean that's it. And then snare drums. Echo Mountain had a nice collection of some old Ludwigs. I brought my Pearl Sensitone. It's a patina copper or patina brass snare that's really dark, and that's a lot of that record. I have a Leedy 14 by 6.5 from the mid 30s that is used on 3 or 4 songs on there, and I have a Gretsch hammered brass that I used on a couple songs as well. And tuned low and hit hard, so you still get that attack, but you don't get a drum that rings a whole lot, but it just makes a real good splatty crack. I call it the wet paper bag sound. That's how I always describe it.
Yeah, right on. I mean, you're a man after my own heart. I mean, your sizes are my sizes, and I mean, it just I think for those of us of a certain age, and you and I are about the same age, it's like, yeah. Okay, how do I get the Alex Van Halen, Tommy Lee, John Bonham drum sound?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
and you will apply that to any kind of music, whether it's, hard rock, heavy metal, Americana, country. That's just kind of what you hear in your head. And, it really does shine on this recording. It's fantastic, man. It really is.
Thank you, man. That's good to hear.
Yeah, you're welcome. So tell us all a little bit about what the rest of 2019 is going to look like for you guys. You spent a lot of 18 out on the road with different acts, just all over the place. Is this going to be a year of some headlining tours, or a little bit more of the package kind of tours? What's in the works for you guys?
Well, it's going to be a little bit of both, I think. I know that, we're just about to start on a 2-month winter tour. And then there's some stuff after that hasn't quite yet been confirmed, so I don't want to get any hopes up and get too specific on that. But I know that it's going to be a busy year. We spent a lot of time on the road. I know the first year that we were out, which was 2017, I think we did in the neighborhood of 150 shows. We put like 65,000 miles on our bus. And, last year was definitely no difference from that. And it's just going to be doing the same thing. I mean, just getting out in front of as many people and playing as many places as we can. And, we're fortunate that people keep coming to see us and people want to see us. And we're pretty excited about this new record and the fans have been very receptive to it and very excited about it. So, hopefully they continue that and keep supporting us the way that they have, because, I mean, doing the way that we do things without, we're not a band that's going after the radio or, doing that kind of thing, where it's just grassroots and getting in front of people. I mean, we can't really, as long as we keep going and doing that and people, don't get tired of us, we're just going to keep working and grinding and doing our thing. And I feel pretty good that it's going to pay off. So.
Yeah, well, you guys are doing a ton of good work out there. And I do want to say this, and please, don't let me put words in your mouth. As great as the records are, everybody owes it to themselves to go to one of your shows. You guys are a live band. Is that a fair statement?
I would say so, yeah.
I mean, I've caught you guys at least once with Blackberry Smoke, and it just goes without saying you got to see these guys live. Now, one thing that I'm going to mention here that it's kind of inside baseball kind of stuff, but you guys are with 30 Tigers, which I'm a huge Jason Isbell fan. I'm very proud to say that I know Chad Gamble from his band. Everybody that's on the 30 Tigers roster is just stone cold awesome. That's just all there is to it. So, I mean, you guys have to be proud of that fact that you've got some really good support from a label that knows what it takes for a grassroots kind of band. You're not going to have the huge radio numbers. So that has to be a point of pride for you guys.
Yeah, I was pretty excited when that whole thing came together, because they're, Jason Isbell and I'm a huge St. Paul and the Broken Bones fan.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, and it was just like, wow, we get, it a lot of people always think it's an honor to be this, but it really is an honor to be, associated and on a label with those guys. With a company like that, because they've been so supportive and they really believe in us, and it's never in a million years if you told me when I moved here that this is what I would be doing. I wouldn't have believed you to be in that kind of company and to be working with the team that we have, between them and our booking agency and our manager Derek and everybody that really has taken a risk and taken a gamble and made sacrifices and put everything that they have to give, to whatever capacity that is behind this project. I mean, it's really humbling, and it's really great to be a part of a team like that.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, so, and I do want to mention this, we did a lot of coverage around Nashville Drummers Jam. And of course, that's how you and I crossed paths, was down there for that event. There's just such a great community in Nashville of drummers, and that event, certainly shows that. What ultimately, what is Jay going to be up to 10 years, 15 years from now? Hopefully you're still going to be out on the road with the guys, and you guys are going to be, Grammys and platinum records and all that stuff. But, in the grand scheme of things, I mean, do you see yourself staying in the Nashville scene and doing cool things like Nashville Drummers Jam? Do you want to teach, all that good stuff?
Well, I'm a terrible teacher.
Okay, that's fair.
Well, I mean, it's I'm not one of those guys that'll sit down and crack a book and all right, page 4, run it, let's go. You know what I mean? Like I'd much rather if I was teaching in any capacity, it's more about talking about concepts and ideals as far as just the basics of being a drummer. But I mean, I Nashville is home. I met my wife here and I bought a house here, and we got a couple of dogs, and eventually we're going to have a family and do that kind of thing. And that's what I'd like to be doing. I mean, I'll play music until you pry the sticks out of my cold dead hands. I mean, that's
amen.
That's just how it is. And if we're fortunate enough, the Steelwoods are a thing in 15 years, I really couldn't think of anything else that I'd rather be doing, with a group of guys like that. And, if that's a thing, that would be great. And if I get to be injected into the Nashville drummer community, then great. It's really cool that I've gotten to be a part of, I've done 3 drummer jams, and that's I know how special that is. I mean, it's within the drummer community, it's a really big deal, and it's you get to go on stage and play, and then a guy like Rich Redmond or Chris McHugh or Kevin Murphy or the second time I've mentioned Ray, just all of these guys in town that are just incredible players that have been written up in Modern Drummer, and guys that I sat and listened to on records and tore their playing apart and knew it note for note and tried to learn the nuances. I'm a huge Chris McHugh fan, and trying to learn what is it about what Chris does that makes him so special, and really just analyzing how beautiful his sense of time and feel is. The way that he can get into these move the song around kind of at will without he's one of the best at that. And Rich has got this thing where he's a power drummer, and I really appreciate that about him. I love watching him play, and I love the way that he makes a set of drums sound, but then you look at guys like Tom Hurst, who was sort of there for the inception of the drummer jam, and it's Tom is such a great player in his own right. He's got his own sense of power and finesse and feel, and and it's for me to be even a small part of that community and to be recognized just by being asked, and most of the time it's because I'm filling in for some guy
no
dropped in the last minute. It's well, we need a body. What are you doing? Well, okay, I'll do that. I mean, it's
nonsense.
Well, and I really hope that if I hope that I get to do that, and I hope that I continue to be a part of that scene, because it's really great, and I'm very fortunate and very happy to be a part of it.
Well, I mean, it's and we talked about this, when we were down there, but there is just a special bond amongst us drummers. And, one of the coolest things for me is getting to know guys like you. You know what I'm saying? And it's oh yeah, man, I know Jay. Listen to this new record he's got out. And I think that's how music travels these days, more so than any promotion machine at all. In our circles, it's, hey, have you checked out the new stuff that Ray is doing, or have you seen what Tom's up to? That kind of thing. And we just have that community going, and you guys have put together a record that I'm sure all of us are going to be talking about.
Well, I appreciate that very much, man. I mean, it's big company to be in, and I really do appreciate you saying that.
Well, you've earned your place. There's no doubt about it, man. I mean, and it goes without saying, you're doing just tons of great work out there, and I can't wait to see how it continues to grow. One of our traditions here, Jay, I think you've listened to the show before, but we always ask our guests for a good piece of advice. And I think you may have kind of a unique perspective on this. Give us a good piece of advice that all of us drummers can take out there in our day-to-day lives on whatever gig it is we're playing.
Well, on the gig, well, I mean, I always tell people, and when I meet younger players in town, and really just anywhere, like I say, first of all, don't say no to anything. Even if it's the worst gig you've ever played, you never know who you're going to meet. And when you get on that gig, even if it's not the greatest and it's not what you expected, and maybe, you don't, maybe you're more experienced than the musicians in the band. Be a pro, play your butt off, and play for the song. Like, don't go out and nobody cares that you can play the first 8 pages of the last Thomas Lang book. I mean, that's great, and go home and practice that stuff and know those things. But if you're out on the gig, play for the song every time. My biggest thing in the studio is, what would Ringo do?
Yeah.
And, because, he Ticket to Ride and Tomorrow Never Knows and all these great grooves that he played that, are not necessarily the flashiest things in the world, but it's exactly what the song needed all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Make their feet tap, make them bob their heads where they don't even realize that they're doing it. Just go out and groove and be great.
Well, that's great advice. But I do want to ask a follow-up question on that, because, everybody says, well, I play for the song. And so oftentimes I think we as drummers confuse that with play something really simple. And you mentioned Ticket to Ride. That's not a simple groove if you think about it. It's easy to learn and easy to play, but it's not simple, but it is exactly what that song called for. So when you're playing for the song, it doesn't always equate to playing something really easy to do. And case in point, the track Without You on your all's new record, you did a really cool kind of shuffly snare drum roll throughout that song.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that, that idea initially came from probably from the deep recesses of the Vinnie Colaiuta phase of my life.
Good.
And that was because Vinny's got that, he's got that touch. And, one of probably my favorite record that he's ever played on is 10 Sumner's Tales.
Yeah.
That, the Sting record. And, it's great because he's able to take any time signature and make it danceable. But he's also so great with finesse and with textures. And, it was just that thing of like, because it's a 6/8 thing, I could have played a real stock kind of 6/8, boom, 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 got. But if you can dress it up and add some texture with, the kind of shuffly march, like, but it's sort of that, it sort of borrows from the Vinny stuff. And honestly, now that I think about it, like kind of 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover kind of vibe too, Yeah. And that is playing for the song. It doesn't always mean make it the simplest thing, but what is something musical that you can do that's not going to get in the way of the vocals, first and foremost what the vocal is doing, and how can you support that better so that you've kind of, created a little rhythmical hook underneath what is going on in the rest of the song.
See, that's brilliant advice right there. That's what we had you on here for, Jay. Because I knew you would come through with just some really good knowledge, and that's good knowledge. Just playing for the song doesn't mean do it simple. It means play for the song, and a lot of people get confused about that, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Jay, it goes without saying, man, you are welcome on this program anytime. Please keep us posted what's going on throughout 2019. We got to have you back real soon. to tell us what's going on out there from the road. Everybody, it's the Steelwoods. The new record is called Old News. Hit the streets on January 18th. Is that right, Jay?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Everybody go pick up a copy of this. You're not going to regret it. Jay, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really do appreciate it, brother.
Thank you, Jamie. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem, man. We'll talk to you real soon.
All right.
All right, see ya. All right, everybody, that's going to wrap up episode 55 of the Drum Shuffle. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. We can't do this show without every single one of you guys tuning in. And just on a personal note this week, I want to thank the fine folks over at Podcast Business Journal for featuring the Drum Shuffle in their spotlight column on Friday, February the 1st. That was a big surprise for me, and I really do appreciate that. So thanks to each and every one of you for helping us get to some of our goals here in 2019. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're using to listen in today. We have some fantastic shows coming up that you are not going to want to miss. Next week, I am going to be joined by the great Mike Johnston of Mike'sLessons.com and the co-host of the Modern Drummer podcast. So you're not going to want to miss that. Mike is just a monster player, super good dude, and we spent some time talking about his career. So you're not going to want to miss that episode next week. We love hearing from you throughout the week. Our email address is thedrumshufflepodcast@gmail.com. Our web address is thedrumshuffle.com. And you can find more information about me over at jamieeads.com. So until next time, may your head stay strong and your sticks never break. Cheers, everybody.